we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
Here. Good morning and welcome. We're glad you've chosen to join us today. This is Behind the Beards, where we pull the curtain back and try to reveal some things you need to know about the people who are called to lead your churches and your ministries. My name is Josh Fowler. I am a preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And my friend and partner and brother on the other side of the screen here, Aaron Partlow, a youth minister from Topeka, Kansas. Aaron, what's going on this morning, man?
Cold weather. That's what we have. It's amazing. It always amazes me, and this always amazed me as like a kid. So I'm still a child when it comes to my weather knowledge, how it can be so warm and how a cold front can move in and just dramatically change your entire life.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It was 55 degrees overnight, which is quite chilly.
Yeah,
quite
sure
chilly for the old Baton Rouge area. So
Baton Rouge,
yeah,
the red stick.
Jonathan calling me out here on my my bare face.
Oh, man.
Football season has begun. I tried to go to my coordinator and say, hey, I can't do this. I have a podcast called Behind the Beards. I can't show up without a beard. And he said, well, I don't care. So
I don't subscribe.
So yes, I do feel really out of place. And every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, who is this guy staring back at me here?
Who is the one I see?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Staring back.
Maybe we should do a sing-along one day. Grab your ukulele and do a little sing-along.
Okay, so also interesting fact, moving on from that so that we can just get away from everything that entails. We could do tallgrass camp songs that have been written. We have 3 now. 3 official tallgrass songs.
Oh, fantastic.
They are actually amazing, and I love them all equally, and none of them more than the other. They're like children to me. So it's funny. We do an 8 a.m. service right now because we're doing an 8, a 9:30, and an 11. And it was really weird on Sunday to go to church while it was still like dark. The sun had just started peaking, but it was still like that dark and twilight. And so that was like a weird phenomena this Sunday. And as fall gets closer, we're in fall. We get closer to winter, it'll be even more interesting if we retain that 8 a.m. service, because we will literally be worshiping like in the dark on a Sunday morning, which is just kind of just really strange.
Yeah.
I always thought that was really weird, like when I would go to school and it would be dark going into school. So it's kind of, I don't know. It was just really like unusual. Of course, we had an unusual Sunday as it is. So our senior minister announced that he will be starting a new journey in Mansfield Church of Christ.
Mansfield, Texas.
So excited for him. Also a little sad, but mainly excited for him.
Well, we can ask a question for people to think about. Maybe they can chime in and give their thoughts as we kind of think about and getting ready to start talking about calling and path and your choice. So I've got 3 kids. One has chosen his path. One is getting ready to choose a path, and one is like, huh? There's life after high school? I don't know. And I remember kind of being in that stage, and my parents were like, you should probably think about college or something. What happens after high school? So how do you choose a career path. And if you choose college, how do you choose a major? What you're going to go for education. So maybe you can chime in and give us some thoughts about your ideas on that. How do you choose? What are some things that go into that? Just kind of let that simmer for the folks this morning. I guess I could put it right here. Hey, I got this. How do you choose? How about, or did you choose your career path?
Yeah, choosing career paths, that's always interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot. We'll take kids.
You've been thinking about your career path or questioning your career path, or?
No, I've been thinking about that question. How do people choose a career path?
I gotcha.
Yes, I'm going to go sell cars. I've been thinking about this because, so we take kids to OC's spring visit, right? Take kids every year. We take them down. OC really likes to pinpoint and target our juniors and seniors. They're like, bring us your juniors and seniors, so we can have them as students. And I talked with Terry. Terry's our senior minister, and we both had like this same idea, right? I said, by the time the kid is a junior in 2020, okay, this was actually like 2015 when we had this talk, but say now in 2020, by the time a kid is a junior, they already know what college they're going to. I mean, maybe not 100%, but like they know, because they're targeting, they're getting stuff done in high school so that they can have the most money, have the most stuff done pre-college. And so what does that mean? Well, that means these colleges that target juniors and seniors. Okay, when I was in high school, OC used to come all the way out to Oregon. They'd go to this big thing called Faith Quest, and that's when we would really get to talk with OC recruiters, and other schools like York and Harding. That's when they would really come out back in my day. And so what has that produced? Well, I think what that's produced is kids are now looking towards college and or furthering their education or what they're going to do after high school before junior senior year. So maybe they are now doing it at sophomore or freshman year. And so I told OC, I said, hey, if you want to lock these kids in, if you want to get your teeth into them and be like, this is where you should go for your higher education, I'm going to bring my freshmen and sophomores. And there was pushback. They're like, don't you bring no freshmen. And I was like, why? I like freshmen. And so we settled with, okay, well, I'm bringing my sophomores. You can either love it or you can deal with it. Because I'm not coming if I don't bring my sophomores at least. So we started bringing, my dad cracks me up still. So we started bringing our sophomores and our juniors and our seniors because I was like, my kids are already deciding what college they want to go to. Is it healthy for us to like decide like that early? I feel like now you have kids who are going into high school, or if you don't decide that early, like what? You're already messed up. Like you can't start your junior. Me, I had not great grades. I was a CB kid freshman and sophomore year. Then I was like, okay, time to like take this thing seriously. So then I went to an AB student for junior and senior year. I feel like you can't do that now. Like I feel like you have to jump in there. You got to go for that perfect record.
There seems to be so much pressure, right? So much pressure to perform in that way. And then there's pressure for, oh, by the way, and you got to work too. And almost like it's this competition for those things because of what this expectation has been laid on them. Like it's almost like it's expected to go to college or university. And if you don't go to university, then, what are you doing with your life? But the truth is there are so many things that you can do. One of them is going to college. You can go to a tech school. You can, we need welders, we need plumbers, we need those types of skilled trades that maybe don't require, a formal university education, but require a whole different level of training.
Absolutely.
And so, taking the stigma off of choosing that path as opposed to the path of university, I think it's really important for our kids, and their mental and emotional health as well as they're growing. Jonathan talked about the Venn diagram. That's kind of what, which IKIGAI. That should have rang some bells for me, but I was stumped in the moment. So, what are you?
What can you get paid?
Yeah.
What can you get paid for?
What are you good at? What do you love? What does the world need? And what? Because money makes the world go round, right? That's the way I chose, at least initially, my career path was I was really, really, really good at math. I loved math. I know. And engineers use math, and the world needs engineers, and engineers make really good money. So obviously, the only choice for me was to go to engineering school.
Speaking of which, if you are an engineer and you would like to sponsor Behind the Beards, go ahead and give us a call. You can check the links. We have email, we have phones, we can do it all.
That's right.
Please like, follow, share, and subscribe.
And I wanted to go to a private or to a Christian school, and Oklahoma Christian was the only Christian school at that time that had an engineering school. So really? That is the only reason I chose Oklahoma Christian.
Is that the 70s?
That was not the 70s, dude. That would be 95. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I was born in 77, so I couldn't be going to college in the 70s. Come on. Now, that is not the only thing I got out of Oklahoma Christian, but that's the reason I chose that path, right? I realized very quickly I was really good at math. I was not good at engineering. And in fact, I hated engineering. And so, I had this kind of path that just kind of chose me. And it wasn't the path of ministry, at least not initially. It was the path of people. And maybe a path of necessity kind of led me into what we were doing at the beginning in the car business. But it's, what are you good at? What do you love? What does the world need? What do you get paid for? I think, that's probably some pretty good questions, to ask when you begin thinking about how do you choose.
I'm curious also, like, like how other people chose, because, there are a lot of jobs that I can see that I don't love doing this, but the pay's good and I can do it. Kind of an idea.
Yeah, well, you have that utopian place, right? Someone once said, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's great. If you have the privilege
of on welfare or something. Lives on a beach in Hawaii or something.
But if there are some jobs that are necessities that I seriously doubt anyone loves, but they still must be done. Riding on the back of a trash truck, picking up people's trash, it has to be done. And
I actually hear like the pay is really good. I don't know if that's
I hope
true.
So.
I'm basing that off of a conversation in high school that I had one time, but that the pay and the benefits are pretty decent.
I sincerely hope that is true. I have not investigated it, but I would hope that we are at some point in society where we have recognized I have to pay someone for the kinds of things that they're going to have to deal with. And I don't even like driving behind them, except for ministry. I don't even like driving behind them on the road for too long. I can't,
right.
But it just takes a special kind of persistence, to do that on a daily basis. So I hope that's the truth, that we
I'm just
are
always curious about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, choosing a career, and then I always think to kind of do a shift. Like today we have. I was very curious when I was in college because OC had started a minor, and they kind of wanted everybody to kind of pick this minor up, it seemed, and it was vocational ministry.
Right.
Right. And it always reminds me of like the New Testament, and you see these, you see Paul, you know, who's a tent maker. You see Luke, who we assume or we think might be a doctor. You know, so we see all of these like full-time ministries who are doing other jobs. And today it's kind of morphed into, you know, something different. Yes, you know, you're gonna always have that guy who's got that New King James sitting in the back saying, "Well, we're all ministers." You know, and it's like, yeah, no, I understand that. I get that. That's not what I'm saying. But we have, you know, now we have paid full-time ministers. We have some people who are part-time, you know, which I don't know how anyone can do ministry part-time like that. That is just, or because I feel like the expectation is still of what you would do at full-time. They're just saying, hey, we're going to pay you half. You know, we're going to pay you half of what we think we would pay somebody to do this full time. And so that's really curious on like, how did we get there? And all sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
That's okay. It's because you saw your dad's comment, right?
I did. Comments really distract me. I love them, but
those, I love those. And I love that getting into something by accident, because sometimes you do find yourself in a place where it's like, I had no idea this could be so fulfilling. And sometimes, like even the car business for me, you know, I spent almost 12 years in the car business, and that was almost really fulfilling. Almost. You know, it fit with my skill set. I was dealing with people every day. I was helping people. When people came, they were better when they left me than they were when they got there, because they came with a broken car and they left with a clean one, and it was fixed, and so just, I mean, problem solving and taking care of people, you know, was just right in my wheelhouse. But at some point I realized, am I utilizing what God has given me in a way that's most effective, or is there something I can do, or something I should be doing that maybe God is really calling me to, that maybe I'm resisting? So
I footnote in what you just said about like taking care of people. So I'm a man of many jobs. I feel like I had like quite a few like jobs. Maybe not like as much as like most people, but for me, I feel like I had like, okay, let's just restart this whole thing. So footnote of what you just said. I worked. There is such a negative thought about flipping burgers, right? Well, I guess you can always go flip burgers, right? Well, I worked 3 years at a Jack in the Box, and I can tell you this right now. I think working at Jack in the Box, it was stressful. I remember there was a night I came home and I was just like very upset, crying because of, you know, some pressures that had to been put on me. But when I look back at those times, I can honestly say like I thoroughly enjoyed working fast food. It was I look at my dad's comment here, fit my skill set. It was fast paced. I'm really good at multitasking on the spot.
As long as it's not reading comments.
As long as it's not reading comments. Well, and that's the thing. Like even reading a comment, I'm still listening. So like, and I have a goofy personality. And I guess what really rung true, what I'm trying to get to is you said like making somebody better off when they left. And that was like my goal when I worked at Jack in the Box. When somebody would pull up to my drive-thru, I'm going to get you to smile. I'm going to get you to laugh. We're going to have a good time. You're going to get a okay burger, maybe, or some really gross tacos. But you're going to remember that drive-thru guy because he made you laugh. And you had a good time in the drive-thru, unlike any other drive-thru where you're like, what? What'd you say? And they're like, you know. My goal was to be different and to be that guy. And that was something that I really enjoyed and I loved doing. And so I did drive-through and worked front counter. And I realized that my skill set, although it worked really well at Jack in the Box, it was working and helping people see like a more positive side, or helping people kind of work through something, even if it was working through having a bad day. So now I'm going to get me some Jack in the Box. That was my joy. I wanted them to receive and see something different. I wanted them, at the time I didn't know, like I wanted them to see that I had like this joy of the Lord, and that there was something different, that even something monotonous like flipping burgers or doing that kind of stuff, like you can find joy in that, and serve the Lord and doing things like that. And so when I did that at Jack in the Box, it was like this molding time for me. It kind of helped me to like learn how to really show other people like this different side. And I didn't realize at the time that was like something that was really important to me.
And how many skills you develop in that,
Oh yeah.
That you probably still use. So we think about, there's a difference here. We'll talk about the difference in being called into something and choosing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do believe that, ministry and the things that we do it is a calling, but calling doesn't get me into a space, right? I hear a calling and then I have to make a choice, to go and do that. So, why did you choose your path? For me, my choice came, I don't want to say God made me choose, but I continued to choose a career that was not necessarily in line with God's calling. I knew from a young age that I wanted to serve the church in some capacity. I didn't know, I was told I was going to be a preacher, but I didn't know what that looked like, especially not as a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, and not as a guy in engineering school, and certainly not as a service consultant and a service manager. I knew I could preach for little things around, and that's kind of what I did. But I knew how much money I could make in what I was doing, and what that money was going to allow my family to be able to, the way they're going to be able to live. So, that became a really hard world to get out of, to get away from. Yeah. And so I just continued to recognize what God was calling me to do, find ways to satisfy that calling, kind of. I'm still doing good work for these people, and I still get to keep this life over here that makes life really, really comfortable for me. And God kind of, through some, I say God led me to this place. I came to this place where I was going to be forced to choose. That if you're going to continue to choose this career over what you really are equipped to do, it's going to cost you. Because I was working so many hours. I was away from home so frequently. And it was going to have to I was going to have to invest more time into my career. And I think that was when I really realized I've been choosing something not ungodly, but God has a design. There's this place out here where I can serve God better, even if it means a little bit of sacrifice. So I came to that point where I basically had to choose God and my family over another career. And I didn't see any other way than to choose this path. I had no idea what it was going to look like. I didn't know what it would look like going back to Oklahoma Christian at 32 years old with 3 kids and a wife, and no other substantial form of income. So it just came to a place where I just had to choose, and that's the path that I chose.
Yeah.
How did you choose ministry? You chose it a little earlier than I did, so.
I don't know. I wish I would have taken notes. That would have been really good. So I have a different story. I was in a weird place when I was in high school. I don't know. My dad probably could tell this story better than I could. But it's kind of like my origin story, but I've kind of told that before. If you want to see that, you can go back to our first podcast. But I would feel like what I wanted to talk about was it's interesting to me. I'll start off with this way. It's interesting to me, the older you get, how more realistic biblical characters seem. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like as a child, I was a judgmental little twerp. I don't know if I can say twerp. I don't know if that's acceptable. Sometimes I say words and I don't know how bad they really are. But
Right.
I mean, that's what I was. And so I think of the story of Jonah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I'm like, oh my goodness, like how stupid can you be, Jonah? You can't run from God. God's telling you to go to Nineveh. Where are you going the other way? Get real. And as a child, I'm like, that guy's dumb. As
Right.
I get older, as I have the Holy Spirit dwelling within me, as I'm smarter, at least I think I am, it is crazy where you can see God calling you and where you can see yourself going, nah. Like it's like God's calling you and he's standing over your shoulder while he's calling you on your phone, and like he can see you go,
Decline.
voicemail, go to voicemail, and God's like, excuse me, I'm right there. And so I feel like sometimes, like I feel like that whether or not you're going into ministry or whether or not you're just serving God, right? I think one of the major things I tell my teenagers, which I say that a lot, like I feel like I probably should just go through and write all these down and be like, hey parents, these are the major things I'm going to teach your kids while they're in youth group. But when we really focus and talk about prayer, I say be careful what you pray for, because if you pray to God, hey God, I want you to use me. I want you to show me where you want me to serve. He's going to show you where he wants you to serve. And sometimes it's not going to be where you want to go. Sometimes you're going to be like Jonah. And you're not going to want to go to Nineveh, but that's where God's calling you to go. And I think in 2020, I think that's a lesson that we all need to swallow real hard. Mm-hmm. And we need to put on our big boy Christian pants, and we need to say, you know what? God calls me to love everybody. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to stop doing the things that cause division. I'm going to stop doing the stuff that spreads hatred. Doesn't mean I'm going to change the way that I believe or the ways that I think. It just means that I'm going to be more conscious about showing other people the love of God instead of other things, because that's the most important. And so when we head towards that calling, so when I chose this calling or chose to listen is more like it, I just felt like God said, Aaron, you're a really good people person. Okay, so I can actually remember in high school thinking like, I really enjoy public speaking. I really enjoyed public. I wasn't funny enough to be a comedian. I got some good quick whips, but I couldn't be a comedian. I really wanted to be like a professional public speaker because I just enjoyed like that aspect. People would be like, oh, we have to give speeches. No. And I'm like, yes, easy A, stand up in front of the group, give a speech, game, easy. But that's when I kind of got into preaching. That's when I kind of got into. So when I went to college, I'll be honest, I didn't know what I was going to be. Like I didn't know how God wanted to use me. So my major is actually in Bible, because I was like, I want to be generic Bible with a minor in missions. And the only reason I chose that minor in missions was because I was able to choose a whole bunch of other classes that fit within this spectrum that
Right.
allowed me to, like, it was more of a focus on multicultural congregations than it really was on actually going and doing missions. It was more like domestic missions minor. And I remember talking with Bob Carpenter about that, and he was like, I don't even know what you're trying to do with these classes that you pick. And I was like, I don't know either, man.
You and me both, buddy.
I just kind of like trying to graduate at this point. So if we can do something, that'd be great. And so it's just like, it was really interesting. And so I'm still like confused, and I'm still listening for God's calling. I feel like God's saying, Aaron, you were in your late 20s, now you're in your early 30s. I think you're still doing good at youth ministry. I think you can still talk and reach. You still have that childlike love and mentality that you can connect with teenagers. You still have fun doing teenager activities. I think that's really important, that I enjoy them just as much as like they enjoy them. And so I get joy out of that. So I feel like God's still calling me to youth ministry. Now we go to a segment of Behind the Beards where we talk about our pet peeves. Number one pet peeve, I hate it when people come up to you and they say this, right? So when you're going to grow up and be a real minister, think about preaching full time. Yo, like, who does that? Who goes to like a motorcycle mechanic and says, hey, when are you going to be a real mechanic and work on something with four wheels? Like, what? You would never say that to a mechanic. Like, give me a break. Like, that drives me up a wall. Nothing makes me want to, like, I wish in the Bible it said, greet each other with a holy slap. Because I would follow that scripture to a T sometimes.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in here. Jonathan talks about, our stubbornness. And, that is true, because the truth is, I mean, we talk and we see about ministers, being called and all kinds of things like that. Speaking of calling, my phone's ringing. Jesus is calling.
Yeah.
We've all been given this calling. We've all been, tapped on the shoulder and in one way or another asked to come and serve the kingdom. We get to choose how we answer that calling. And sometimes it's going to be more robust than others. What we tend to want to do is we want to choose a form of answering God's call in a way that brings us the most comfort and the least amount of sacrifice. And that's kind of where we get to this place where, we're just kind of beating our head against the wall, thinking that we're going to push through and find ourselves in this place of complete and total fulfillment. When we end up just unconscious on the ground going, why in the world isn't this working? It's like, well, it's because you're using your head for a job that a sledgehammer needs to be used for. Or you could just turn around and go the other way, and I'll get you around this wall, just not in the path you're trying to take. And that's where, Joan brings us in here, that sometimes we find ourselves, when we're willing to just follow along, we find ourselves in those surprising moments going, wow, I didn't see this coming. Yeah. And sometimes you don't realize that until you're kind of in it, and maybe sometimes even looking back at the way things have worked, and you see the way God can use you when you're willing to just go with it.
I didn't realize until I worked at the Southwest Church of Christ in Tigard, Oregon under Jeff Grow that I would want to do youth ministry full time. Yeah. And that was the last internship right before I got married. Really, actually, the summer before I got married, that I did that internship, and I left that internship after the crap got mentored out of me, and I learned everything that I wanted to and I needed to at that moment about youth ministry. That I went, okay, I can do this. It's not as scary as like I thought it was. Jeff just showed me that, hey, there's a couple key factors that you need to do youth ministry. One, you got to know your Bible. Two, you got to be consistent with these teens. You have got to be consistent. And then three, you've got to be open and willing to be there for people when nobody else wants to or is willing to.
Yeah.
And I took those three things and I wrote them on my heart, and I said, this is what God is calling me to do. I love what Joan says there at the end. If I was out of my job description, instead I chose to learn from it. Like,
Yeah,
that
come
idea.
on. I'm supposed to be teaching you. You're not supposed to be
Yeah.
teaching me in this thing, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
The idea of being open.
I saw that. Someone asks you to do something, just say yes. If it's possible, just say yes. And that kind of fights against that stubbornness. Be willing to try something that you may think you're not very good at, or
Yeah,
I'm not really gifted in that area. How do you know? Unless you've never tried it,
it's true.
you never know what comes up. It's so crazy, when I have found myself so much more fulfilled and so much more at peace when I just say, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but I'm just going to trust that God's either going to provide me the strength to make it through this thing that's going to be miserable, or he's going to provide me the ability to overcome in ways that I can't do on my own.
Absolutely.
And I learned so much about myself in those moments. This is kind of taking a little path I didn't plan on, but it's been really, really good. I hope it's been good to listen to. It's been really good to talk through, and think about some of those things. And did you ever feel like really called to ministry? We said that everyone is kind of called for some kind of service. Ever a time in your life where you really said, not like heard a calling or something, but really looked and said, yeah, I am in the right spot, in the right place, for the right reason, with the right people?
I feel like I heard the calling, but I feel like I really, honestly, if my mom is here, mommy, are you listening? If she was here, she might verify this story, or she might say that I was lying, or she might say that she slept since then. But she said when I chose to go to OC, I remember having a conversation with her in the kitchen, and I said, well, are you gonna be really sad if I go to school in a different state? And she said, Aaron, she said, I've known since you were a young child that you were different and that you were gonna be away. So I have started, she said, I started a long time ago preparing her heart to know that she was not going to see me as much as her other children later in life. And that like meant the world to me. That for me was God speaking through my mother saying, Aaron, I have been preparing you for ministry your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, but I've always had that song, like the Rubber Tree song, anyway, I always have thought about, like, I know that's weird, but my mentality of being a minister is that you just have to be like durable. You have to have thick skin. You have to be rubbery. You have to be this. You have to be able to take criticism. You have to be able to sort through it, and all of these kind of things. And when I look at like my relationship with my mom and my relationship with my dad, I feel like they prepared me for this life of full-time ministry. That it's really frustrating, that it's really amazing. And so, yeah, like maybe I didn't like feel it, but when I look back, I see the preparedness that I was given, that working at Jack in the Box, did I have people who came in belligerent and outrageously angry over stupid little things? Yeah. And I learned how to show them grace and love. Boy, that comes in handy at church. When I worked at Camp Yamhill, I learned a lot about a whole bunch of different little things to do. Well, when I've done ministry and I was the hired young guy in Washington, boy, I sure did know a whole lot about a lot of things, enough about a lot of things to be able to do some stuff. That was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do. I feel like I was called to ministry, and I feel like I was really called to ministry, and more than that, I feel like I was prepared for ministry.
Yeah, and
I hope it lasts.
it's a long road, right? And there's a lot of different influences that come about in there. I don't know if there was one like specific moment, that I can really look at and know that I kind of realized I was in the right place at the right time for the right reason in that calling. But there's this realization as time goes on, and the realization is I am in this place almost in spite of myself and some choices that I've made. And that goes even to, Heather and I have a really good relationship. We have a good marriage. It's always been a good marriage. You don't realize what you have until you begin working with people who have the same upbringing, the same background, the same training, the same kind of education, but are still in this place where they're looking, going, how in the world did I get here? It's like, well, I can look and I can see pretty plainly how you got here.
Right.
Yeah. This, and this. And they say, I didn't really think that would affect us that much. It's like, how could you, that's just like almost like second nature to me to think about. How could you not think that was going to have this impact? And, some of these conversations I would have were really, really early on in our marriage, like 2-3 years into our marriage. I didn't have the wisdom of a couple of decades of marriage. And we would have people coming who had been married for 20, 25 years, almost asking for some advice.
Right. Yeah.
In some ways. We had really, really solid mentors that we didn't even really realize were mentors that laid some groundwork for us in our marriage that definitely served me well when I was in the car business. But since moving to ministry, those habits and practices that they instilled in us early on have allowed that relationship to maintain a level of closeness and strength that I wouldn't be able to have otherwise. Ministry's challenging. It's challenging for families and marriages and kids in all these different arenas.
Yeah.
And I look back and I see, those people placed in my life at very specific times and moments to where it's like, man, I couldn't be the minister I am today if I didn't have the relationship with my wife and kids that I have. It would affect and change my ability to do that.
Absolutely.
And we found ourselves in a position to minister to other people in that arena. And you can see that preparation working, from the time I was 15, 16 years old, as you kind of look back. So
incredible. Yeah, I would say it is really amazing. It's amazing how couples can be called into ministry as well. And like you said, you would not be the minister you would be without your wife or without your children. I would not be the minister that I am without my wife. I would say the thing that I feel like Lauren and I are called to ministry, and I'm gonna say this, and then God's gonna really put this to test. So, I'm really scared to verbalize this publicly on Behind the Beards. But what defines, I feel like our marriage and our attitude and our ministry is this overarching trust that God will provide.
Yeah.
We were in scary moments in Washington, and we had this peace about us because we believed God would provide.
Right.
We've been in moments here in Topeka where we were really worried, but God has always provided, and so we always look at each other. And we go through different moments. Sometimes that she's really stressed out. She's like, I don't understand why you're not worried. And I'm like, well, I kind of feel like, I just have to be all in. I'm either going to trust God or I'm not. And I feel like I'm just going to trust God and that he'll provide and he'll take care of us. And we'll just keep looking out for the right signs. Right. And then I'll be in moments, and she'll be like, "It'll be okay. God will provide." And you know what's crazy is every time God does. It might not be the way that I wanted it to be, but I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still.
Yeah, I've had to ask
got a roof
myself
over our head.
and my wife that question many, many times. Has God ever left us hanging? For long.
Yeah, for long.
He's left us hanging at times, but he's never left us. He's always provided. When we make a decision in faithfulness to God, he has always provided.
Yeah.
The times where things have completely failed have been the times where I've counted on my own desire, my own wants, my own abilities. And it's been following what I want without even asking the question, what does God want from me?
Absolutely.
I think, when we look at the behind the beards moment, this is what it looks like behind the beard. It's you see why we keep it covered.
That's right.
And then I'll let you kind of sign us out as we're getting a little long.
It's okay.
I just want to encourage folks when you look at your minister. I think a lot of times we see our ministers as people who were just born and handed a collar and a Bible and said, "You're going to be clergy. You're going to be ministry. You're going to serve God's kingdom in this way," and the whole life has been built up to this place, like it's just some great magical calling, and everything just kind of fits perfectly. I think the important thing for us to remember about people who serve church in that position is, we are called, like we've all been called. But it is a choice that we've made to follow this in a certain way. And even though, God has been working on me differently than he's been working on you, we've all been prepared for this in one way or another. But to choose to follow the calling is one that comes, it's not really mystical. It's not supernatural most of the time. The people who are leading your churches are people that have chosen this life, and they've chosen it because they love God, because they love you, and because more than anything, they want to see each and every one of us succeed as citizens of the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
And that means they've sacrificed a lot of things to get to that place. They've sacrificed a lot of personal desires and wants, and maybe even some real passions, in order to go to the place where they believe that God can use them in the most efficient and effective way possible. So, that would be my encouragement, is to remember that. And it's encouragement for me to remember too, that hey, I chose this.
Right,
I do have a choice in the matter. And I chose this path to follow God in this way.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh. That's wonderful. And like you said, our behind the beard moment is to help reveal and understand your ministers better, and understanding that they are following a calling and that it looks different than any other job out there. And it's difficult and it's hard, and it weighs on them as much as it can. So we want to thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it. We love you guys. If you have comments or ideas about shows or things you want us to talk about, you can email us. If you check our Facebook page, we actually have a Behind the Beards email. You can comment on our Facebook, send us a message through there, or email us. Any of those will work. Check those out. Give us some ideas. Give us some insight. We have set episodes. We're getting close to that 10th episode. After 10, we plan on having some guests and doing things a little bit differently. But we wanted to set a good foundation for what we wanted this show to really be. But like always, we want to remind you of Galatians 6:9. We want to remind you guys to not grow weary in doing good. This world is messy. This life is messy. And we just need that light of Christ to be shown. So allow Christ to use you and do something different. Do something good in his name. I'm Aaron, and this is Josh, and we will see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard, a man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beer.